Greetings, peace, and power. Happy Saturday to everyone. This is Dr. Mustafa Ansari from the Afrodescendant Institute of Human Rights and the Afrodescendant Nation. The concept of Afrodescendant, I know, is a new concept, at least to us in the United States, for the most part. But it is a definition, and here in the United States, and this is one of the reasons why we're in this predicament, is because we lack definition. So this concept, let's talk about the concept of Afrodescendants. And next week, and I've just got a message from our esteemed Dr. Clyde Winters. He's an expert, and one of the experts who was one of the convincing people who encouraged me just by his erudition and his writing and his research to change the definition of who we were from African American and being just Black to Afro-descendant. That's a very important definition, very important concept. How it came about, and we may have Minister Silas Muhammad from the Afrodescendant Nation, not to be confused with the Afrodescendant Confederation, although we are lockstep in our outreach and in lockstep in our goals of being free. He was one of the many people in this hemisphere from different countries, Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil, the Bolivian nations, Venezuela, Ecuador, all of these nations, the Caribbeans, all of these nations in our hemisphere have a foundation of African descendants, the ancient ones who ventured out and from Africa eons ago to different places in the world. One of the places in the world that the Africans finally made it to was the Americas, and this was anywhere between 100,000. Now we have another peer review or a bunch of peer reviews, and peer reviews are when you write something scholarly. There's other authors from different parts of the world and different professors from different parts of the world that look at your work and as your peer, and to determine whether or not there's some corrections or there's some confirmation they can give you. And these are called peer reviews. Some of the peer reviews, of which I'm informed by our other expert, Dr. David M. Hoptep, date back to 230,000 years ago, that there was an African presence in the Americas. Bring this up to date as to who we are, and they will explain it, of course, a lot more detail than I do. But what's important for us is that we are a mixture of about 4 African populations, including the oldest African discoverers, which was over 230,000 years ago. We're part of that milieu that made it to the Americas, and we're part of the populations that came afterwards from Egypt and from Nubia. These were early settlers in the Americas, way before Columbus. Take this back to after Columbus, in which we're more familiar with, the transatlantic slave trade. That occurred in our entire hemisphere so much that it changed the entire complexion of the Americas. And so you see over the last 500-600 years that there's been a complexion change of the indigenous people of the people in the Americas. In any case, this definition, Afro-descendant, is very important. And the reason why it's important is because it links us with 250 million more Afro-descendants all over the Americas. This gives us tremendous power, not only because of that, but because of the efforts of those Afro-descendants, including Silas Muhammad, who was I think may have been the only one from the United States of our people that were in attendance in this country called Uruguay, who came upon this definition to describe all of us as Afro-descendants. This is very important because this coming together was not just merely a happenstance. It was brought together by the Inter-American Court and the Organization of American States. The Organization of American States is the human rights organization that covers all the American states and the Caribbeans. This is very important because for the first time, we are able to establish identity, which was the problem that the earlier lawyers, reparations lawyers, had when they went to the United States court. They could not represent anyone because they didn't have a people to represent that they could represent that gave them standing. And this is the reason why it's so important as to what we did the last couple of weeks. We put another step on that thing called nationalism when we informed and gave notice to the United States Secretary of State Michael Pompeo that we were a nation, and that we were moving forward with these definitions to eventually engage in a conversation with the United States on reparations, on how we should, in our new relationship, the new relationship that repairs us, probably about 50% repairs us, if not more, is our understanding and the United States understanding that we are this indigenous people that are made up of all of these population waves, including theirs, who eventually have become known as the Afro-descendants, and that we are an indigenous people. That's another definition that's very important that we will go through as we prepare to now have this new body politic. And if you've been listening to our broadcast and our definition of what politics is just, and this is just what it is who gets what. That's what politics really is. It's an approach for a people or a certain people to get something in the society. Politics. The politics, and this is one of the frailties of the civil rights movement, is that they never gave us this understanding. So we didn't know how to politic. We didn't know how to get what. And because we didn't know how to get what was gotten from us. And what was gotten from us was more of our lands and more of discomfort through gentrification. What we lost was dignity, because we didn't have the sophistication to understand that this was not a melting pot, that this was not just an America that everybody would eventually melt into, and that we were just Americans. No, this is what we call America is a pluralistic society, which means pluralism means more than one. This is a society that's made up of multiple groups. It's made up of Indians, it's made up of Italians, it's made up of Jews, it's made out of white people, it's made out of farmers, it's made up of all of these different groups. And these different groups in politics are made into gain their power through what they call political PACs, political action committees. So we have these super PACs who put candidates forward, and they could be made up of farmers, it could be made of bankers, it could be made up of the rich. Most of them are made up of the very rich, and they're able to push their agenda forward. We were not taught that. We were not taught that there were certain things that we should do to get what? To get our part of the American pie. So what we have done is to, and because of our understanding of who we are, now we know how to get what we can structure ourselves. So we have structured ourselves into a small but emerging nation. And this is the reason why we are constantly asking for your declarations. This is just like asking for your vote. This is very important because because of our misunderstanding, we have been throwing away maybe 1 billion votes since we have obtained the right to vote. Last voting cycle, when there was a presidential election, we wasted 15 million votes on Hillary Clinton. On the election before, when President Obama was voted into office, we wasted 16 million votes voting in President Obama. And I said wasted because we didn't get anything. So, and politics is a exercise of who gets what. That's what it's supposed to be. So, and then so on and so forth. Since 1865, we have thrown away votes and have just barely have been able to keep our heads above water in certain cities by having Black mayors and Black elected officials who can do very little because we're not in the right configuration. So what the Afro-descendant nation is and what nationalism gives us, it gives us a body politic so that we can get what? We can obtain economic power. That's what politics is really about. It's about money. It's about how to obtain and privileges. It's about how to gain the best quality of life in the United States. And so this new configuration gives us the opportunity to gain the best quality of life for our children and ourselves that we possibly can obtain without. It gives us an opportunity to live freely without being excluded from society's wealth. Nationalism for us congeals and reconfigures 45 million of us who have tremendous wealth when we come together, believe it or not. Separately, we don't have wealth. We're landless for the most part. Although we do have, I don't want to say landless because that's a misconception too. We have maybe about 6 million, 8 million acres of land out of millions of acres, millions, multi-millions of acres of land here in the Americas. We've lost 15 million acres since the 1900. So this nationalism, this definition of being indigenous, allows us to obtain and be able to negotiate lost land, because all of the land in the United States, because of our ancient ancestors, the first people to a land are indigenous, and they have the right to live on that land, prosper without being interfered with, to protect their children, preserve their culture, preserve their economic, and preserve their society uninterfered with. Colonialism and this is, and we'll get to that, the reason why we filed to be decolonized. Colonialism is an illegal interference with the indigenous people's right to land. This this makes it, in our case, illegal for the United States to lord over us in any way when it comes to land. We have put all of the land in dispute in America by our filings, and we want you to back us up. Let me repeat that. We have put, by our filing in the Decolonization Committee and our recent notice to the United States, we have put all of the land in the United States in dispute. A brother from the Nation of Islam, he asked me about 4 or 5 weeks ago, as Minister Farrakhan in the Nation of Islam is now trying to move toward becoming a nation. He asked me, "Where's your land, brother?" I say, the land is all of the land within the metes and bounds of the United States. And the reason why this is so is because under international law, the first people to a land are the rightful owners of that land. We were first. We can prove it. Next, in fact, just right before this broadcast, one of our experts, Dr. Clyde Winters, asked me, could he come on? And I should have, but we were already set. We were ready to go with the show, and we'll have him on probably next week. But all of the land that we have, all of the land in the United States is now under dispute, but we need your backing. We need some of those 15 million votes that have been wasted on Hillary Clinton, the 16 million votes plus votes that was wasted on the Obama administration. They got us nowhere. And all of the votes that we voted for these white caretakers, presidents, from the time that we obtained the right to vote in their country, that's quote unquote United States, have been wasted. And it has allowed them to lord over us illegally. So now we get a chance with your backing, and we need close to 1 million votes. The 15 million votes that was wasted on Hillary Clinton, the 16 million votes that was wasted on President Obama, those votes, if we had just a portion of those votes, we can give a showing to the courts, United Nations, our lawyers, myself and the rest of our lawyers can give a showing to the United States that we are protesting and disputing those land rights. This allows us to be able to go into negotiation for the first time, a political negotiation for the first time in the United States. And I say for the first time because we never had this understanding that we are indigenous and that we have to configure this thing, politics, so that we can get what? So that we can get the economics. So now for the second and third steps to what we're doing, we are seating a 400 facilitators. I'm one of the facilitators. I'm the chief facilitator. I get one vote. We are now looking to instill, to train, and install 400 facilitators. This would be the facilitators have several duties. One is to put a stethoscope on all of the assets in their cities and in their states that we have. The second thing that they duty that they have is to put in that politic our own election apparatus, because there's the definition of who can give an election is that the people can give an election. So using that definition, we are putting election apparatuses in various cities. Our first test city is Detroit, Michigan. Brother Ramsu Yunus, through a courageous, almost, he willed an election based upon the concept and based upon the law that we have the right to, upon the democracy, that we have a right to define who our representatives are. He has held two elections over the last, three elections over the last 3 years. We have now entered in with this new understanding and these new and this sophisticated election apparatuses now to put a test in Detroit and in other cities across the country. We're looking at, with our 400 facilitators, to put in at least 20 election sites in different cities: Baltimore, Philadelphia, Jackson, Mississippi, Birmingham, Cleveland, Newark, New Jersey, Atlanta, Georgia, about 20 different sites in which we can obtain your democratic consent to be, number one, an Afro-descendant, two, a member of the Afro-descendant nation. This gives you and gives us now the power to shift the money, which is what politics is. It's about who gets what. The money, which is located in many of the institutions. In the institution, in the educational institution, this shift would bring $20 billion on our side of the ledger. $20 billion. Not only the dollars, but it also gives us the best opportunity now to shape the future by shaping the minds of our children to who they are and giving them goals to what they can achieve, because now they have a body politic that protects them. We have the other institution is the police power. We get police power with this. The police power in the United States, the money has been spent, and we will have access to that money because becoming an insular nation gives us the right to, and we'll talk about this in the upcoming series of triple citizenship, that gives us the opportunity to have the Confederation citizenship, the American citizenship, and an African citizenship, because that fourth population wave from Africa that being forced onto and leaving on the ships, leaving our land and our families behind, and all the increments of wealth and our standing and our indigenous and our rights to land are under international law. This is called the right to return. This is a big deal because now it gives us the ability to return, not as foreigners to Africa, but as to citizens of Africa. So we have the ability, because of who we are and because of our history, to have 3 citizenships. That gives us power. We have to be able to utilize our intelligentsia enough so that we can survive in these cities here in the Americas. Right now, we're not surviving well. We're just not surviving well. We are getting beat, killed, excluded, gentrified, and tormented by the white American society, who are in international law called belligerent occupiers, because they don't own the land, but they are belligerently, that means stubbornly, defiantly, without just cause, have forced themselves over our land, and in doing so have subsumed us into their society. This is a legal challenge that some people call reparations. What I've done, I've allowed access to the UN reparations law. It's been codified. So And this is and it's been codified for about 15 years. So reparations has been defined, and reparations for enslaved people or colonized people, which we have been, the first thing the best thing that you can do, the best first thing you can do to a person who has been either enslaved or colonized, and we have been both, is to give them liberty. Liberty is another word for the ability to have their own authority without the oppressive colonial people being in charge over them. This is what we want your support for, because it is your right, and it is the only way and this is just the way of civilization, civilized people, from tribal people on up. This is how they survive. This is how their identity survives, is that they become tribalized or create or nationalized, so that they are someone, they are somebody, they are a people. We have not done that. We have not done that. And this is the way to do that. This is the reason why we are going after so many votes, so many declarations, and informing you of the rights that you have not been taught about in the colonial educational system. And that stands to reason. Why would they want to teach you that you're more than a Negro, that you are more than a slave, and give you a couple of pages and move it on, keep it moving into the great pioneering of America? This is not, especially the history and the social sciences that have been political sciences and how they're taught in the Americas, in the United States, are deceitful. They have, because they, of course, want to obfuscate discolor our true standing in the Americas. And we have the opportunity now to elect ourselves into a people that now can be defined. What this does and what this allows us to do now, because reparations is a collective, for the most part, and I say for the most part, because there's cases of individual people being repaired because of what a government did. But collective reparations, and this is what the talk is about, collective reparations can only be given and only be obtained by a collective. Collective reparations can only be given to a collective. Let's take the example of Israel. 30 years ago, Israel was a pimple on the body politic of society, until they maneuvered and configured and moved to repair themselves, the Jewish people. They didn't do this through a court. It started off as a court. They did this through the politicking of becoming a nation. This started right after World War II. In 1945, this started what we call, these are the first reparations principles. They're called the Nuremberg principles. If anybody is familiar with the Nuremberg Trials, this was a trial of one of the most famous. It was about 20, maybe 40 Nazi officers that were put on trial. These were the Nuremberg Trials, and they were put on trial because of their participation in the Holocaust. So these Nuremberg principles that came out of the Nuremberg Trials were the first reparations principles. This occurred at the same time, but prior to the Jewish people having a nation. But at the same time that the Nuremberg principles were going into effect, the Jewish activists and the Zionist activists were now politicking to find a place on this planet where they could settle. And they didn't settle in Germany and where many of them were born. Excuse me, and in Poland, where many of these Zionists were born. They decided, and I say they, the United States and the British and the Western powers decided to put them in Palestine. They didn't stop there. They still had outstanding harms that have been done to them, just like the harms that were done to us, except our harms were 100-fold of the harms of the Holocaust. And the reason why is because the Holocaust only lasted 4 years. The slavery, institution of slavery and discrimination has lasted 400 plus years. So you multiply 4 years time 100, and you'll see why I'm saying that our harms and what was done to us was 100 times in intensity of what was done to the Jewish people. However, they moved through this understanding of their concept of who they were, which was defined by them. Our concept of who we are has not been defined until this point by us. The concept of who we are was defined by the former slave masters. The 14th and 15th Amendment subsumed us into the American Constitution allegedly. And this is the start of the Jim Crow era, and this is the reason why I say allegedly. This was a trick of delaying trick until we became wise enough to nationalize, to nullify us as a people. And this is the reason why discrimination and exclusions have been so harsh on us, because it was an exclusionary body politic that we were subsumed into. And we have thus been excluded from our own lands. We've been excluded from our place in all parts of society, parts of white society. And we have been pushed around through land developers and just unscrupulous whites off our lands. So this reconfiguration, which we can do because a people who we have just become an Afro-descendant people, because this is the name and this is the body politic that we have chosen to politic out of, has now have a foundational base and a structure, a collective structure to receive reparations. Now, with your votes, we can now negotiate reparations. This is how it's done. If you look at the other organizations, and we are going to speak to them because we have a confederation. A confederation is open to all of our organizations, open to all of our different people, no matter what their backgrounds, no matter what kind of definitional framework that they're coming out of, Muslim, Christian, Moors, whatever foundational concept that they're coming out of, it allows Afro-descendant people to have an Afro-descendant nation. We're going to reach out to the other people and organizations that are moving reparations piece, this reparations piece, which is a worthy piece, so that we can share our understanding on how to body politic it in such a way that we can collectively receive and redistribute what we think would solve the issues in Chicago. If we had, and Chicago has a $6 billion budget. Remember, this is all about the Benjamins. This is all about money. In Chicago, and this is just an example because Detroit has the $2 billion budget. So if we're successful in Detroit, and $2 billion is a lot of money. If we had $2 billion a year in Detroit, I guarantee you that our police department, that our school institution, that our police department, that our streets would be clean, safe, and sophisticated. That we would be able to feed ourselves, we would be able to educate ourselves, we'd be able to control the deviants in our society until they came into our body politic. We would be able to do that. So this training session for the summer and beyond, because the summer session is just to have the facilitators have the workable training to be able to now go back into their cities, Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, Jacksonville, Florida, all the places in which we have these great populations, Miami. They'll be able to go back there, put a stethoscope on the assets and the deficiencies, which are great in those areas. We have drug addictions, we have single parents that don't that can't take care of their children. We have many problems. We have educational problems. We got this miseducation. We have a lot of white teachers that really dislike our children, that are teaching our children, and we want to replace them with Afrodescendant instructors. We want to bring in our elderly to get help with the little kids. And to be, we want to bring in our professors and our experts to deal with our college systems in those areas. We have to have a sophisticated body politic, a nation, to be able to have the power to be able to do that. And what gives a nation power is votes. This is the reason why you vote every so often, is to confirm their control over you. This is what has been happening, especially when you don't have anyone to vote for. The last election, we were voting for and all the rest of the elections, we were voting for the lesser of the two evils. That is a sick way to body politic. That's a sick, unnerving, treadmill way to obtain power. You can't do it. And this is the reason why we're in the condition that we're in. We just have to sit back and think, what have we been doing with these votes, with this power that we have? This is the only power that we have. We have a tremendous power because we have a tremendous population. We are the largest tribe in the whole world. Not only the largest tribe, we're the wealthiest tribe in the whole world. It's 45 million of us. We have 1,200 cities in which we are the majority population. Let me just run that back. We have 1,200 cities in which we are the majority population. That means that we're supposed to obtain the wealth of all the institutions in those 1,200 cities. That means that we're supposed to control the business because we have the power of being able to issue business licenses in 1,200 cities. But because we are unsophisticated and unidentified as a people, we have not been able to do that. Who has been able to do that the best in the United States? The Jews are only maybe 6 million people in the United States. They control New York, they control the Senate, they control many cities, not only New York, but they control many cities across the world because they have an identifiable body politic, and because of that, they have an identifiable goals. And they have been able to push their children through law school, medical school. They become bankers. And all of these pushings, because of who they are, they have now become a very powerful piece of American body politic. Let's compare their population with ours again. There are only about 6 million Jews, but there are 45 million Afro-descendants who are being obfuscated. That means smushed around in these cities because we do not have an understanding. And I want everybody on this site, everybody on that we're talking to this morning, all of you, to get the book, Civil Rights to Human Rights, because we explain this in detail, what reparations is. And this is something that the reparations groups have been struggling with. They don't even know what it is. They don't even know that reparations has been codified under international law. The reparations organizations don't even have international lawyers. They may have a domestic lawyer here, a domestic lawyer there, but if the domestic lawyer is just using white folks' law, which is the Constitution, and using the white folks' court, which is the federal court, as you see, they have not been able to push the issue of reparations in a real manner. And they are unable to obtain collective reparations because they do not have the concept yet that in order to obtain collective reparations, you have to be a collective. That just makes sense. It's just how it goes. So we have put together a course, and I've put the file on so that you can share it of the syllabus. And this syllabus will allow the 400 facilitators to be trained. It will allow the table of 7. I call it the table of 7. These are national facilitators who will be trained. We have 4 so far. We have we're appointing Ishmael Bey, attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz. I'm a national facilitator. Then we have Elena Porter. So we have 4 of the 7 people that are going to be national facilitators. And we're looking to train the other 400 facilitators so that we can facilitate our national existence. What would this look like? If we would be able to facilitate our national existence, it would bring upwards of $200 billion into our Afro-descendant treasury. That $200 billion, is enough so that we can have the state-of-art schools. Where you go to our school, it'll look much like LeBron James' school. And our hats off to LeBron James. That brother's just spectacular in so many ways. But the school that he has is like the top school. The kids have computers, they have laptops, they have very good instruction. They won't have as good as instruction as we do, because our instruction in our schools are going to be pointed toward them in this body politic, and will show the child, especially as he goes through the different stages of learning and grades, where that child will fit in society. This has not been done for us. Consequently, we don't have a place in American society, and we are losing attraction every day. In fact, in the next 5 to 8 years, we are going to become worthless. And this is not worthless as a personal or people level, but worthless in the sense of our assets and our debits. In Boston right now, an Afro-descendant is only worth $8. Let me run that past you again. In Boston, an Afro-descendant Bostonian has a net worth of $8. The Bostonians are not alone. In Chicago, it's probably less. And in your city, it is supposed to go down in the next 5 years to a zero-sum amount, which means that you become a slave again. You have a zero-sum net worth, which means that the gentrifiers and anyone that has net worth can smush you around and move you around. They're moving you around now. Nationalism stops all of that. All of the organizations, how can we fight gentrification? How can we fight racism? How can we fight being excluded? You nationalize. That's what you do. You come together as a body politic. And we have, at that point, will become the authority over the territory in which we have the majority of our populations. And we can make those individual body politics, those individual cities in which we have majority control, fabulously wealthy over a period of time. In fact, what nationalization does, it's a body politics that's at the highest level. In fact, let me just give you this. Nations are the catalysts and the engines of wealth. The stronger your nation is, the more wealth your nation should have. The United States is wealthy, of course, because of us, then smushed us around, so that the white people now that are in power are a superpower. We made them a superpower. Out of our inventions, out of our body, out of our just our labor that they've subsumed, they have become a superpower. So what we are doing is legal. Everything that I've just explained to you is legal. Everything I just informed you of, you can confirm. What I'm saying to you is that if you want to save yourself, become a participant in your own nation. Those of you who are college educated, especially, we need you. We need you in that 400. We need you in your city and your state, and we need you to be trained. We need you to be trained in the international conventions, and I've given you a syllabus. You should be able to pull it down. We're going to talk about the big 5 conventions: Civil and Political Convention, Convention on Elimination of Racism, Convention on Declaration on Indigenous Rights and Resources, the Convention on International Standards of Policing, how to police, how you'll be able to understand what policing is. Because policing is especially in a domestic setting and in a non-war theater, it's a way to nurture the society, even the deviants in the society, when you police them in a way that they can be rehabilitated so that they won't offend. This is really what the challenges that we have, because right now we're the most locked up, and the United States has over 1 million prisoners. Over 50% of them are our people. And these go from not only the men, but our juveniles are locked up at a tremendous rate, and our women are locked up at a tremendous rate. And for different reasons, mainly economic. 86% of the crimes that they have committed were property crimes because they have been excluded. So now, with this thrush of money and tools and rehabilitation programs that a nation can put into place, we can now reform our own people. The United States, on the other hand, and I'm a political science professor and have been one for a number of years, and there's been a number of conferences and conventions on how to reform criminal justice. Excuse me. The big answer is that you can't. We cannot reform criminal justice because of what? Because it's has a racial foundation of customs of being. excessive when it comes to us, excessive punishments when it comes to us. This is the reason why you have this strange dichotomy of sentencing for the same offense. Because it's racially, the judges, when they take off of those out of those judges' robes, they're white people. The district attorney, white people. The police chief, white person. Even in a majority populated Afro-descendant city, this doesn't make sense. This only makes sense if you're a slave or you are just an oppressed person and don't know your way out of it. This is how you get out of it. This is how you get out of it. So what we would like to do, and we don't like to hold you over an hour. We're at about the 51-minute mark right now. And unfortunately, haven't configured this for your questions. But any questions that you have, you can give them to us at adselfdetermination@protonmail.com. You can send those questions. And if you have not declared your national status, we want you to do that now, because we need to prepare you for where we're going. And we're not going to stop. So if we can take 100,000, 200,000 into our tribe, and that's what this is, the Afro-Descendant Nation is actually, under international law, a huge tribe, because the Afro-Descendants are a tribe. In the countries that I just named, all over South America, they have, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That means that they have tribal privileges, which is equated with indigenous privileges. It gives us the right to land, gives us the right to be our own authority, gives us the right to be not under colonial authority. Secondly, we've filed in the United Nations all of these notices and all of our requests to be decolonized and to have our own identity. So we want your participation. Those who are not college educated, we want your help in volunteering. Everyone will have a position and a spot in the nation. And you get in where you fit in. If you can help us tremendously, and you can obtain a position of authority where you can do that, of course, you would be paid more handsomely than if you did not have those skills, but nonetheless a participant. Instead of being on the unemployment levels, you would be employed. Or instead of being uneducated, we would educate you. The reason why is because we want a very educated society, because the more educated we are, we become more civilized. As you notice, the more uncivilized elements of our society are people that have the less education, and we want to bring them up into a quality of life in which they can now, instead of running away from their responsibilities concerning our children, they can be there. And they don't have to disappear because they don't have money. They will have employment. They won't be in fear of the black on black crime, because we would be the policemen. They won't have a food desert where they have to run 10, 15 miles to obtain decent food from other people. We have our own grocery stores, our own food security, transportation, educational institutions, police power. This is what a people in our situation, especially being inside of a superpower, have a supreme opportunity to do. And so we are going to do our best to persuade and to teach and to train all of you, as well as the organizations, on how to do this step by step. It's not going to be any shortcuts. Everybody has to pull their own weight. And this is how a society advances step by step. We are a great people. We have great assets inherent great assets that we want to bring out of everyone. So I'm looking forward to, and I want you to invite as many people as you can to the Saturday and Sunday lectures, because I'm gonna do this Saturday and Sunday up until our summer session begins, because we want to get these numbers up so that we can do what we say and say what we do and become the people that we need to be. So I thank you so much for your time and attention this Saturday. We will be back and we'll open it up for questions. You have our address. You're free to do that. We want you to participate. Thank you so much for having me in and giving me the time with you this Saturday morning. Thank you very much. I will talk to you next Saturday and probably next Sunday. Thank you so much.